Very good morning to everyone, and thank you very much for joining us for our first conversation of the day, the Year of the Ox, China and what's to come in 2021. My name is Daniel Fielt, and I'll be happy to be joined here today by the EUISS's analyst on China and Asia Studies, Alice Ekman. Good morning, Alice, if you can hear me from Paris.
Hi, Daniel. Good to see you. And we will talk about 2021. And as you know, 2021 will be a very, very important year in China. If we look at the visual that we have for 2021, if we just look at domestic events, we have to keep in mind that it will be the year of the 100 years anniversary of the CPC. It may sound a bit symbolic from our perspective, but it will be very important for China in terms of glorification of the current political system, and also in terms of projection of an image of recovery to the world. So you have the 20th Party Congress, the 20th Party Congress that will take place in 2022, and 2021 is really a year of preparation of the 20th Party Congress. In China, the 20th Party Congress will be a period of time where Xi Jinping most likely will renew his mandate. So from a political point of view, 2021 is very important, given that it will be a year during which Xi Jinping will consolidate as much as possible his existing presidential power. But at the same time, it will be an ideological year which will glorify the party. And this year we have to start back in March with the launch of the 14th five-year plan. This 14th five-year plan is an economic planification document that ranges from 2021 to 2025, and that will really very much focus on technological investment. So in this year, China will try most of all to consolidate its leadership in a wide range of technologies, not only 5Gs and telecommunication technologies, but also will reinforce investment in data center, in blockchain technology, in submarine cable technology, in also, of course, a wide range of AI technology and facial recognition technologies. So, of course, these are all ambition from China's side, but I think it's very important to keep this in mind, because for China, 2021 is domestically very important, but also Beijing hopes that it will be a year to position the country towards greater technological leadership, and most of all to consolidate its rank as second largest economy at a time when the US and most part of Europe are busy coping and managing the consequences of COVID-19. So all in all, to sum up, Daniel, China considers that 2021 would be a year of opportunity to consolidate a balance of power that plays in its favor.
Thanks very much for that introduction, Alice. And before we go any further, I should remind those listening to us today that you'll get the chance to ask us some questions, Alice some questions. And you can do that in two main ways, either through the YouTube channel itself, or you can go straight onto Twitter and ask your questions directly there. But if you do so, please remember to use the hashtag today, EU4Sight, so that we can spot any questions and not miss any. Alice, from what you've already said from your introductory remarks, there seems to be a lot on the agenda for China. And I mean, from a kind of outsider perspective, we see at least kind of four different themes which you've touched upon. Firstly, the global pandemic. Secondly, the technological dimension, which you've touched upon on 5G and a bit broader than this. Also on the human rights question, that seems to be a lot in the news of Hong Kong and the Uyghurs. And also then, of course, following the back of last year with the EU-China investment agreement. And I'm sure we're going to get questions on all of these factors, but maybe let me come back to your main point about the importance of all of these developments in China. And we know that the year of the ox is supposed to symbolize fortune and personality. And I'm just wondering, from what you said, what is the significance of this symbolism, the ceremony, and the kind of normative basis for what will happen in China this year, especially with the Communist Party? And does that, at least to your mind, signify a kind of continuity with Chinese diplomacy over the last few years? Or do you expect some kind of rupture or shift in the way that China engages with the world, especially given not only domestic events in China, but also the fact that we have a new US president as well? Maybe your thoughts on a bit deeper on what are the consequences? Continuity, change? How should we see China?
Definitely continuity. I expect a reinforcement of China's self-confidence, positioning in the world. Xi Jinping clearly called for the reinforcement of the so-called the four confidences, including confidence in China's own development path and China's own political theories. So now the 100 years anniversary of the creation of the CPC will be really a year of glorification of the Marxist ideology. I know from our perspective it sounds surprising, but really we have been noticing ideological revival in China over the last 8 years, and this will be really the year where we see it very concretely in terms of references, in terms of also approach to economic governance. But to answer more specifically your question on diplomacy, China's diplomacy, we have been noticing in part of the world development of China's so-called wolf warrior diplomacy, a rather assertive diplomacy, and I assume this will continue. But we'll have to take into account differentiation of China's diplomatic approach towards countries that China consider potentially hostile, for instance on Hong Kong, with diverging position on Hong Kong or on Xinjiang. China's propaganda apparatus will certainly continue to promote a wolf warrior diplomacy in a way that is tit for tat. So basically you put into question our policies, will necessarily put into question not only your policies but also your governance model and your political system. So this will continue to see a very strong battle of narrative, and I think 2021 will be very tense for several EU member states in this regard. At the same time, we will see a continuation of China's seduction diplomacy toward part of the world, including first and foremost towards developing and emerging countries. In particular, China is hoping to enlarge its circle of friends. That's an expression of Xi Jinping, basically to reinforce cooperation with countries it considers friends who could become friends. What is a friend of China from Beijing perspective? It is a country who is supporting its position on Xinjiang, on Hong Kong at the UN, for instance. It is a country who have signed a memorandum of understanding on the Belt and Road. It is a country who will participate at a high level to a multilateral forum that China is organizing, such as Belt and Road Forum, Sanction Forum, etc. But it's also important to have in mind that China is trying to build coalition today. We are now seeing an emergence of a battle of coalition, and one is clearly China-led and is not only diplomatic, but it's also supported by technological offer. For instance, during the pandemic, China was very keen to give or to sell a technological device to diversity of countries to fight the pandemic. To give you an example, for instance, China was providing thermal cameras to diversity of government, including Kenyan government or the Lebanese government, was also providing drones, was also providing a diversity of technologies that help to communicate, such as video conference system powered by Huawei. So we really see countries who are more and more welcoming Chinese offers, including medical offers, technological offers, and other countries, including most of EU member states, who are increasingly upset with the battle of narrative that has surrounded the COVID-19 crisis, and who are less ready, to welcome Chinese offer. To follow up on one part of your question, I think it's important to have this in mind on Hong Kong, because you referred to Hong Kong, and we saw in the visual previously that in September, will take place Legislative Council election in Hong Kong. And this is very important because until then, it's likely that we will continue to see a very tense situation on the territory, repetition and aggregation of arrest and arrest warrant, not only targeting locals, but also citizens who have dual nationalities or citizens who are located outside of Hong Kong, as a new national security law allows. So on Hong Kong specifically, it will be really a very strong tension point between, of course, the US and China, but also between most EU member states and China.
Okay, thanks very much. Before I ask my next question, Alice, just a reminder to the audience to please do send in your questions or your comments via YouTube and Twitter using the hashtag. Alice, in your response to the last question, you made reference to European perceptions and the so-called battle of narratives. Now, of course, it's too simple to say, why should Europe care about China? It's obvious why it should care. But I wonder if you could give us some impression over the year ahead. How should Europeans respond to some of the developments, themes, and even initiatives taking place in China over the next year? I mean, what should an EU response to China look like over the next year or so?
First of all, I think China is, of course, important. It's an important market. It's an important diplomatic power today. But in Asia, there is also a lot of other EU partners that EU member states and EU would gain in developing ties with. And it's already starting to be the case with the reinforcement of ties, in part under the connectivity framework. For instance, an EU-Japan connectivity agreement was signed about 1.5 years ago, and also other type of such agreement might be signed. But by this I mean the diversification of EU's Asia policy, I think, is definitely the way forward, at a time also when the US is also diversifying its ties toward Asia, or at least trying to restore ties with its natural partner in Asia. So also, as I mentioned earlier, as we are facing a type of coalition building competition between allies and partners on one side, also with the emergence of the Indo-Pacific concept, and also cooperation between some allies, such as within the Quad framework. And at the same time, you have China's trying to enlarge its circle of friends. It's really important to have the big picture in mind and to really reinvest in multilateralism. Basically, to avoid this bipolarization of the world, and I think there is a lot of ways to avoid it, but coalition building is really key, and in part at key international organizations. So that's one point. That's a big picture approach. In more concrete terms, when we talk about human rights, and more specifically Hong Kong, I think it's really now time to think also about the protection of EU citizens abroad. Because this is an emerging issue that I think will reinforce in 2021, but also 2022. Because as I mentioned, when talking about China's self-confidence, China is not planning at all to put itself into question or to readjust its policy towards either Xinjiang or Hong Kong. On the contrary, it's likely to reinforce in the coming years. So this really will put human rights at the center of the agenda, and it will create a lot of tension, and may also delay or put into parentheses other issues and other type of partnership. And you refer to the comprehensive agreement on investment. We have to remember that this is an agreement in principle that needs to be ratified, adopted by the Council, and then ratified by the Parliament. And it's a long-term process, and many other issues on the EU-China agenda may also be on the way of this process. And some argue that there is a way to differentiate trade partnership with political cooperation and cooperation on more sensitive issues. I have doubt, to be honest, at this time, when more and more we are seeing that political issues and economic issues are becoming interrelated, and including in the negotiation process. For instance, the comprehensive agreement on investment in principle is more and has included content on forced labor, and this will be, of course, a key issue that the EU Parliament will touch upon.
Yeah, thanks so much. And I think you have already alluded to some of the points that will come up on the question session. And indeed, we are getting questions coming through, so please do send them in. Alice, my final question, at least to you within the time that we have, is, we tend to get this kind of perception, at least in the media, and you mentioned it in terms of China's self-confidence and the kind of narratives they wish to portray around the world. And one of them, of course, is how they're dealing with the pandemic, also in terms of their economic growth model as well. But I wonder, if you look to the year ahead, 2021, and you see that kind of rosy picture that's been painted of China, what to your mind are the main kind of disruptors to that potential, or the kind of showstoppers? Do you see any showstoppers over the year or so that could impact China's position in the world?
Yes, Daniel, definitely COVID. I mentioned that China is betting on the asymmetry in terms of COVID recovery, considering that its economy is one of the few in the world who is showing sign of economic growth, while most of other economies are facing the consequences of medical consequences and economic consequences of COVID. But we are also seeing a reemergence of new cases, new contamination cases in China today. Every day, as we speak, there is officially more than 100 cases reported, mainly in Hebei province, in Jilin, in Heilongjiang, in northern China. China may face a new wave of contamination. We don't hope so, but and we do not hope so in any other countries. But the COVID-19 situation is not stabilized in China yet. So the bet that China is making that 2021 will be the year of renewal of the party and the Chinese nation and economic growth, and that will consolidate China's power position and position as second largest economy in the world, and will reduce the gap between its economy and the American economy. I think that this remains a bet, and we will have to double check in the coming months if this is actually happening.
Thank you very much. And I think that actually segues wonderfully into the questions that are coming in from the audience, Alice. So I'll go immediately to them, actually. And one of them comes off of the back of what you've just said about, COVID potentially being a spoiler of some degree. One of the questions we have is whether or not this degree of maybe overconfidence on the part of China in dealing with the pandemic, does that in itself symbolize a kind of domestic vulnerability within the context of the kind of legitimization that you said China would strive for with the Communist Party, or not?
The question is overconfidence is a weakness of China today? Yeah, is it?
Yes.
It's a very interesting question. It could be. I would say overconfidence and maybe opacity is a weakness. I just mentioned figures, 100 cases declared every day, but actually it's very hard to double check these figures. As it's very hard in general terms to know more about the pandemic situation in China. So opacity between China and the external world, but also internal opacity exists in China today very strongly between various bureaucratic division, various ministries, between ministries and parties. And also it's becoming more and more a top-down governance system. As CCDI, the Commission for Discipline Inspection, is very powerful and generated a sense of fear within the party elite in China. I know it's a bit technical, but it's important to have this in mind, that many party cadres today in China are fearing to take initiative in the present political context. So more than overconfidence, I would say fear is a weakness in China. Overconfidence, China also have reason to be confident. I'm not sure it's overconfident. It has economic reason, objectively, to be confident. It has also diplomatic reasons, because I mentioned you have a growing number of countries who are reluctant to accept Chinese technological offers, for instance, but also have an important number of countries who are supporting China's technological development, providing market access, but also supporting China's position at the UN on Xinjiang and Hong Kong. So it has reason to be confident. What is interesting to note, really, is the fact that Xi Jinping is thinking about ideological confidence. He considers that for too long, democracies have promoted their model abroad, and it's time now for China to position itself as a country or as a system of reference to the world. Basically, already over the last 3 years, China has provided training program to high-level civil servants from developing countries, positioning China as an example, basically teaching senior officials in a diversity of countries how to learn from China, how to conduct, to adjust the governance system so that it's more China-like, basically more efficient according to two-party communication. China does not talk about the China model. It prefers to talk about the China example or China solution. But the idea is to project China as a reference governance system. And we're really entering really strong competition of governance system, the one that Gustav was referring in the introduction, in a sense. And I think this should not be underestimated because, once again, the political calendar in China is encouraging this trend. Even if China is facing COVID-19 wave of contamination, the propaganda apparatus will do its best to promote China's political system as a system of reference to diversity of developing countries.
Okay, thanks so much, Elise. We have about 4 minutes left for our conversation together, but there are still a number of questions coming in, and maybe I'll try and group some of them. I mean, one of the major themes coming through in the questions is about human rights, and in particular the issue of the Uyghurs, and not specifically related to the EU, but there is a question about how you think that issue in particular could color or influence US-China relations. So maybe a brief reflection on that from your part, please.
We can look at it from at two levels. First of all, the human right level, which is very important. And already it's gaining importance in the first few days of the Biden administration with labeling of genocide, and then China reacting very strongly to this labeling and tit-for-tat exchange, and probably more diplomatic tension between Washington and Beijing on the situation of forced labor in Xinjiang specifically. But in addition, there is another level of analysis, which is technological tension. You know, Daniel, that one of the reasons why that was mentioned in the U.S. Congress also to call for more I would say a more aggressive or policy on China's technology was to say that it's not the role of the U.S. to support technologies that are taking an active part in surveillance system in Xinjiang. So, for instance, the introduction in the U.S. administration entity list of companies such as Hikvision or Dahua, who are video surveillance companies, video cameras companies powered by AI, this was motivated by the situation in Xinjiang. So I'm getting to the point that more and more Xinjiang will also lead to a diversity of sanctions towards companies, Chinese companies who are taking an active part in the surveillance system in Xinjiang, but also towards foreign companies who have, in one way or another, link to the forced labor in Xinjiang. So we're already seeing this emergence. This is at the center of tension between Washington and Beijing, but then could also overlap and enlarge to a broader debate involving EU member states.
Okay, Alison, we have limited time, but just maybe you could briefly answer this last question, which is on what should we expect from initiatives like the Belt and Road initiative from China over the next year? And this connects with a lot of issues about the EU's focus as well on the Green Deal and the digital transition. Could you give us a flavor of how China sees this in the year ahead, but very, very briefly, please?
Very briefly, Daniel. So Belt and Road will continue to be there. You know, it has been included in the Constitution in 2018. It's a flagship project of Xi Jinping, so it will continue to be in the pipeline with a significant readjustment from investment in transport infrastructure towards more investment toward the digital part of the Belt and Road, including e-commerce, including cooperation between regarding a diversity of technological companies. We mentioned data centers earlier, so it's a readjustment towards more immaterial material form of Belt and Road, and also China more and more is talking about health, New Silk Road or health-oriented Belt and Road. So in the context of COVID-19, Belt and Road will be in the air, but will more and more, I think, be a label for multilateral gathering that China will push at its initiative. And it has always been there as of actually. We often mention Belt and Road as an infrastructure project, but it's first and foremost a diplomatic project. Under this label, China will continue to organize Belt and Road Forum. Who will participate, at which level, all this will be diplomatic and strategic question in some regard. But China also will continue to give and to sell key technological products that were used during COVID-19 and are still in use, such as AI thermal cameras, drones, facial recognition device, robot, etc. So more and more we will see a technologically oriented Belt and Road.
Thank you so much, Elise, for that. And thanks for also cramming in so much information in such a short period of time. Well, that's all from us for this session. Please do stay with us for the rest of the day and the other conversations that will come. It leaves me just to say goodbye and enjoy the rest of the day. Thank you.